Hi, everyone. Welcome back. Create the Space has had a bit of a facelift, a little uplift. I am here. I am excited to bring you the new and improved version of this podcast. I have spent some time learning and refining the mission and understanding how to get this out to more people. So thank you so much for being here. We are going to hop right into today's episode. I have the incredible Haley Smith, fertility expert. So I learned so much through this episode about what does infertility even mean? What is that diagnosis? To nutrition, to intuition, and all things fertility. I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed having this conversation. So welcome, Haley.
It was such a story of, physical health, but many things in Oregon also cracked me wide open. Spiritually, emotionally. It was such a journey of getting to know myself, and it continues to be. I always say the student loans I have for graduate school, it was so much more than just getting that piece of paper. It was very much a journey of getting to know myself, and it's been a wild ride, but it's getting to know myself in this way. And this has consisted of psychedelic experiences, 7-10 years of therapy, and using nutrition, and what would go on to be specializing in fertility and getting to know my menstrual cycle and my hormones to all kind of accumulate to how I serve my clients today. So I'll pause there and let you dive in wherever you want, and I'm happy to dive deeper anywhere.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think, I want to focus today pretty much on fertility. Just in general, I'm curious sort of, and this might not be an answerable question, so don't worry if it's not. But I'm curious now or then, especially now, I feel like the field of nutrition is so, it's like, okay, so this is a terrible analogy, and there's probably going to be like one person that gets this. So do you know Woody Allen? Everybody knows who Woody Allen is.
Yes.
Love him or hate him. He made this movie. Most people don't know it. It's called Sleeper. Have you ever heard of this movie? No? Yes, and most people haven't
I
heard
have
of it.
not.
It's like a lesser known Woody Allen movie. But basically, the reason I'm telling you is because whenever I think of nutrition, I always think of this movie because in the movie, he's like, it's in the 70s and he's this health food, quote unquote, nut, right? 70s health food, right? Like the OG health food stores with organic was crazy back then. And they have this machine that takes people into the future in the movie. And in the future, they're all eating like these giant vegetables and they've like realized that everything they thought about health was wrong. And it's just so to me, it's so interesting. And my question is really like, how for yourself now, then, or whenever, do you navigate that like field of like constantly changing information and really knowing what's best, what for this season of life? I think you understand what I'm asking you.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you were to, gosh, I wish I could just like be a fly on the wall observing myself when I was going into graduate school for nutrition. And my idea of what nutrition was then is vastly different from what it is now. I mean, mind you, like I said, I came into this field because I wanted to control my body and keep it a certain size. And it was just such a rigid approach. And now it's nutrition, and I'm sure we'll get into, fertility and understanding your menstrual cycle. It has been such a means to be in communication and be in relationship with my body in this way. I am like, nutrition can mean so many different things to so many people. It can look a million different ways. And what I love about tracking your menstrual cycle and the fertility awareness method is like what you eat, you get to use your menstrual cycle to see how it's working for you. While the nutrition science is important, and I do acknowledge that, and I, support my clients in eating ways that's going to help build up their hormones and support their fertility, but it's also, I take a very intuitive approach and I honor what every different client's body is telling them what they need. It's so different. And I think in this world of so much noise, what I see my job is to help women communicate with their body and be in relationship and be in communication with it. And, I give you starting points of like, hey, here's a good starting point for nutrition, or if you're experiencing this symptom and you're doing this, let's try this and let's see if it's different. But it's flexible, it's intuitive. And by the way, nutrition, it's not just what you're eating, but it's what you're absorbing, how you're absorbing it. And like the nourishment doesn't just come from food, but your lifestyle, your sleep. And it's it's so much more than just the food we eat. And I try to relay that to my clients.
That's so good. And yeah, I just want to stay here for a minute because I have a few thoughts and I'm curious your thoughts on my thoughts. Hey guys, that's called a podcast. So One of the thoughts I have is I feel like just like with everything, like I see this so much with biohacking. Like
Mm,
for me, it's cold plunging. I see this. I think it's so geared towards men and men's bodies. And I think that it's, so important if you're a woman with a woman's body to really work with someone like you who has taken that time because I think most of the generalized information is actually not for us. And the other thing I want to touch on is I've been thinking about this a lot. I have a 2.5-year-old, as you know, and I think the whole concept of kids' food is bananas. And I'm so curious about that. Like, we went out to lunch the other day and I looked around the restaurant. It was a small place. There weren't a lot of people, but still, like there's probably 5 other families eating. Every single child, except for my child, and this, I'm not saying this as like a virtue signaling thing. I'm just saying this because
mhm.
of what I'm saying, was eating macaroni and cheese and cornbread. Like that's what they were having for their meal. And you go to a restaurant and you look at the kids menu and it's like, what? Why are
Yeah.
we starting our children off with this baseline of like, pardon my French, but I'm just going to go for it, crap for the most part?
I'm so with you on this. And oh gosh, it's like we could go so deep with this. One, to your point about the research, women weren't included in research studies until like 1994.
Oh,
So,
wow.
quite literally, the majority of the recommendations are still being funneled through male physiology and being applied to women. I'm with you on the
Mm-hmm.
cold plunging. So, one of the common threads I see in my practice is women's adrenals are just tanked. And something like cold plunging, that's stressing out your nervous system. And I've heard people talk about we can like kind of cycle sync it, doing certain phases of your cycle, but I mean, and it's going to be different for every person. But to your point, I mean, the overarching theme here is like the menstrual cycles and women's physiology hasn't been considered in so many areas. Intermittent fasting is another huge one.
Mm-hmm.
Being told to skip breakfast or to not eat a meal out of the day, and it's leaving women really depleted and going to pregnancy really depleted.
Mm-hmm.
And then, gosh, the microbiome is another huge piece that has been such a staple in my work this past year. And I interviewed a naturopathic doctor on my podcast earlier on this year, and we got really into how a baby's microbiome is developing in gestation. To your point, I mean, the field of the microbiome is fascinating, and there's still so much being discovered about it. But what I learned from her is up until the age of 3, children's microbiomes are that is when they are developing the most. So to your point, when we see these toddlers eating macaroni and cheese and cornbread, and it just not even being a consideration, we can do so much better. And I think, we're starting to know more, so now we get to do differently. But yeah, it's wild. It's
It's
wild.
so
And
wild. Yeah. And it drives me crazy, actually. Like, I really think kids' food needs a rebrand because, and this has to start because parents, I'm not blaming the parents. This is what they're told
no,
to do, like it's literally called a kids menu. So unless you're, an outlier like myself or someone else, there's no blame here, but it's just
no,
like, it's crazy to me because first of all, we're setting like you're saying, we're setting our children's microbiome up with this. And then second of all, there's some stuff that's going on a subconscious level about like, what's good to eat and what's delicious and, like their palates and their taste buds. And so it's really funny. And I think this is such a cool place to start, actually. I didn't intend to do this. But if you think about how we end up with the preferences and the desires that we have, which sort of fuels most of the way we eat to a certain extent, obviously, it's like look at where we're starting, most of us.
100%. And I also like you said, there's no blame here. And I also want to acknowledge that most parents, they're up against $1 trillion business that
Yeah,
is in the business of making the food addictive and attractive
totally.
to your children. So I,
Totally.
I just want to acknowledge that. And it takes a lot of like willpower and just like a lot of intention to fight that $1 trillion business. But it's fascinating. And it's why, I'm so passionate just about education and the foundation of health of our babies. It does start in gestation. So it's like the more we can do with your microbiome pre-pregnancy and
Mm,
during pregnancy, then I think it'd be really interesting to see like the preferences of kids of
hmm.
women who do that work. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I can just say my daughter, again, this is not about like, oh, look at me at all. I promise you guys, I am not perfect. Nobody is. And this is not a shaming situation. I really want you to hear that. She's never been exposed to certain things, right? Like certain things like that she's just never had. And she loves sardines and sauerkraut and organ meats, which, ugh, I
Oh,
don't
that's
like.
amazing. Wow.
But that's because from the time she was teeny tiny, that's what I gave her, that's what I gave her. And so, yeah, she also loves fruit. She also loves sweet things. Like if I let her eat fruit all day long, she would. If I let her eat carbohydrates, bread, and fruit all day, she 100% would. Right? And we can talk about the reasons. We're not going to talk about the reasons why, but you can find out the reasons why for
Hmm.
that at some point. However, she doesn't even know to ask for those things, right? I think it's so important to really just acknowledge that a lot of us, our parents didn't have any of this information, right? And so we're really starting from this place where there's probably some subconscious and some microbiome influences. So it's not always that easy to really understand like how to fuel ourselves.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And I think, the more that we can get out there, it's like the preconception season, it is the most like fruitful time to set yourself up for what we're talking about. I think, it's amazing the influence that we can have in this pregnancy preparation season of our life, not just on your foundation of health, but your babies and beyond. The mission of my practice is to support or change. What is the mission of my practice?
Hold that thought, guys. I've distracted her with macaroni and cheese and chicken fingers.
No, but to change, to support generational health through preconception care.
Mm,
The influence we can have on it can make such a huge
beautiful.
difference. And yeah, it's what I'm so passionate about.
All right, let's get into that because that's really exciting. So, I love your content on Instagram, and I have some questions based on some of your recent content, but I just sort of want to ask you first, like what are the people most often I'm assuming people are coming to you because either they just want to prepare their bodies for pregnancy or they've been struggling getting pregnant, but tell me sort of like what your typical client comes to you for.
Yeah, a lot of people come to me when they are essentially at their wits' end with the
Mm,
traditional healthcare system.
mm,
A lot of women who have either been trying for 6 months, more often closer to a year or more, 2 or 3 years. Maybe their provider or their doctor is suggesting IUI, or maybe they've tried IUI and it hasn't worked, and now it's on to IVF, and just something in their soul doesn't resonate with it. Like they know there's a different way, they know that their
mm,
body can do this. They have questions like, why am I being prescribed letrozole whenever I'm ovulating and I'm
mm,
getting pregnant, but I'm not staying pregnant? Ovulation is an issue. So they're asking really good questions. And oftentimes they're looking for that person just to collaborate with them and ask these good questions and dig deeper. And my job and what I do in my practice is taking a very functional approach of asking the questions of how do the different systems of our body that might seemingly be unconnected all weave together to create your internal landscape and your current fertility reality.
mm,
So what this means is looking at systems like our digestive tract, our adrenal pathways, our HPO axis, hypothalamus, pituitary ovaries. How is your body communicating and, creating what you're currently experiencing? Kind of overarching, a big question we ask is, does your body feel safe to conceive? And if
mm,
not, why not? Does it feel too stressed out? Do you have the resources to conceive? Is your gut microbiome standing in the way? Does it feel like a fertilized embryo is a threat? So we're just asking those questions and digging deeper. And I see a lot of women who have quote unquote unexplained infertility. I don't use that language. I say unexplained fertility challenges or
much better.
whatever it might be. It's, infertility. I think it's a really awful word that's used too often because you are not infertile unless you have had surgery to remove certain organs or if you are postmenopause. It's not unexplained. We just haven't found the answer yet. And oftentimes women just haven't found that person to be willing to dig and find the answers. I think a common concern I get is women come to me having done all these tests, have seen all these different doctors, and they're like, what if you don't find anything either? And that has never been the case in my 8 years of practice. Like there's never
Mm,
been a case where I'm like, well, shit, everything looks fantastic. I don't know. There's always something, and it might not feel direct. It might not be like, oh, yes, this is the big thing. Oftentimes, it's a million little things. Maybe your
mm-hmm,
immune health is low. Maybe there's too much inflammation. Maybe your gut microbiome is missing specific strands that really support implantation. So
mm.
it's a million little things that come together, and we take it one step at a time. We chip away at it, and a lot of the times, magic happens.
That's so beautiful. What about the partner factor? Because
Mm,
as everybody on this podcast probably probably knows, unless this is her first episode, I went through 5 years of fertility struggles before conceiving my child, and that was something that I still think about, like whenever I talk about this or hear about this, is yeah. So just do you involve the partner in your work, and how, because I feel like it's always just all this pressure is put on the woman, and
Yeah.
then there's like, wait a minute, there's a donor over here donating some serious part to this. So yeah, let's just talk a little bit about that.
I'm so glad you asked this. Yes, very recently, actually, I've gotten a lot of women who have come to me because I do include men's health and men's fertility just as much as the female factor in it. And a lot of women are saying like, oh, I just haven't found a provider who puts equal weight into this. And what we know very much is it is very equal 50-50 split of the fertility challenges we're seeing. I think it's like 1/3 female factor, 1/3 male, 1/3 both. So it is
Mm,
very, very equally split here. And I want to just start this conversation off by saying I don't think it is, from my experience, it is not a lack of interest in men wanting to be involved in this work. It is more so a gap in the healthcare system of not
mm,
having the resources to give men or to support them. In my clientele, at least, I see men wanting to be involved. Of like, dude, I see how this is weighing on my wife. How can I support her? Like, what can
mm,
I do? So it's really beautiful. So I'm so happy to provide that space. Just like women, sperm health has been on the decline for many, many years. And where it started, where it's now, like it's not
mm,
okay. Not
mm,
to the fault of, what men specifically are doing, but it's the environment. Our soil health, it's the nutrients of our food, it's all the plastic that's being used, it's
keeping your
EMFs.
phone in your pocket, dudes, don't do
Oh,
it.
get it out of there. Get it out of there. Yeah, again, it's a million little things. But I do think there's a huge gap in men not being supported in this area. It's not every case. The offer is always there. The offer is always there for men to be as involved as they want. Sometimes they're working with their own provider, which is fantastic. But very recently, just in the last few months, I'm also running GI maps on my guys. Sometimes I'm doing the Dutch test on my guys too. So just like women,
Which is a
I
hormone test, guys.
yeah, the Dutch test, dried urine test for comprehensive hormones. It's fantastic. Just like the women, I really see it as we need to support their internal environment and, take this multifaceted approach just like I do for women.
Yeah, I want to talk about a lot of things, but I think I want to go next to sort of this overarching thing, because I think it can be so isolating, and
Mm,
one can feel like this is a problem that I have and everyone else just gets pregnant by looking at each other, and it's not the case. So I would love for you to just talk about what you're seeing sort of on the larger scale. Like, we have this data.
mhm,
Fertility rates are
mhm.
declining. This is a thing, and we can talk about, why we're guessing they are, because no one can really truly know the full picture. But yeah, just so that people that are going through this can feel a little less alone, just sort of, yeah.
I'm so glad you brought this up. And I think this is why podcasts are so fantastic because, you can hear these stories, but I think it's still missing of women like gathering and sharing these experiences. I recently had a client who was interested in working with me and she wanted to talk to some of my previous clients just to like hear their experience. So she got to have a conversation with them. And her biggest takeaway was like, oh my God, like it was just so nice to hear that I'm not alone, that I'm
Mm.
to hear their story and to see them on the other side of it and they have their baby. But it was just such a breath of fresh air. And I'm a big fan of Brene Brown's work, if anyone has also dabbled in her work. But, she talks about shame. And the best way for shame to grow is to just keep it all inside. And the way we kill shame is to give it oxygen. It's not part of my practice at this time, but in various ways, I have gathered women to just have these conversations. And I'd like to do it again at some point in the future. But I think it's so important. It's so important. And it's one thing to hear it from me of like, I talk to women every week, like, upwards of 20 or 30 who are experiencing these fertility challenges. Sometimes it's secondary fertility challenges, or, they're trying to have their third baby and for some reason it's not happening. So yeah, it's like I can sit here and tell you that like that you're not alone, but I want to just acknowledge that it's different hearing it from the source, and I get that. But for what it's worth, you are not alone. And
Mm.
it's very, very prevalent. And again, it's just, I think it's so much of like gathering up the oomph to like, try that one more time or find that person who's going to dig with you. Because there are answers out there. But yeah, it's the emotional side of it is it's huge.
You mentioned secondary fertility and
Hmm.
tertiary.
Thanks for trying. I wasn't willing to try that word.
I'm always willing to embarrass myself. Once a clown, always a clown. So yeah, I really want to talk about that because,
Hmm.
I'm not saying we're there yet. We're not there. I don't even know if I'll ever be
Sure.
there. Um, my husband and I are trying to have another child, and I have several friends that are in the similar boat. Especially, I can think of this one friend specifically who I know she thought it would be a breeze because the first time was a breeze,
Hmm.
and it's
Hmm.
been over a year, and it's, not a breeze. So let's talk about that.
Yes, 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 yes. I need to run the numbers on this to get more organized with the stats, but off the top of my head, this has to be more than 50% of my clientele.
Wow, wow.
It's very significant.
Hmm.
And it's almost always, I had my first child unexpectedly. We got pregnant on the first try, maybe the second try. It was easy. Now my baby is 2 years old and I want to try again, and it's not happening. I hear and see this so often, and it can be fucking crazy making of like, it's such a mind game of like, I don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And overarching, again, we can never give a blanket statement to everyone because it's so individualistic. But I think it is a crisis of women going into pregnancy in a depleted state. And rather than, and the approach I want to take with it is like, let's acknowledge how amazing your body is, the resilience it had. And I'll give an example of one client because I think it's such a perfect picture. And I've shared it in other spaces and I've gotten a lot of like, this was me too, me too. But this was a young client. She came to me in her early 30s and she was trying to have her second baby. She had experienced three chemical pregnancies, which is a really early miscarriage at like
Mm-hmm.
week 5 or so, 4 or 5. And she was at her wit's end. I don't understand. She had her first baby 2 or 3 years prior, relatively no complications. But when I took a look at her timeline, it looked like this. She had been on birth control, I think, since her late teens until mid 20s or like mid 20s or so. She was off birth control for 2 years before she had her first baby, which I do think helped her body to give that buffer of recovery. Immediately after she had her baby, they put an IUD in her. It was like that same year. I don't know if it was like in the hospital, but it was that same year. She would be on the IUD for I think the next 2 years. She got it out. And I think the next month after she got it out, she ran a triathlon. So she had been training for a triathlon for, however
Oh,
long that
wow.
training process is. She did a triathlon. I think the triathlon was in July. And then in August is when her and her husband started trying for the second baby. And then between August and I think it was November is when they had like three chemical pregnancies. So the conversation I had with her is you have done two superhuman events, probably from a depleted space. We know that birth control, I think she was on the pill first and then the IUD, but we know what those are doing to your body. They're depleting you of certain nutrients, they're causing inflammation. And yet, your body had the resiliency and the oomph to have your baby relatively easily, no complications. You have a beautiful son. And then you train for a triathlon. Like, my gosh. And society knows that a triathlon is a superhuman event. But what's not acknowledged is so is pregnancy. And
Mm.
I can't remember off the top of my head if she also breastfed her baby. It doesn't matter whether she did or didn't. We're talking about two insane events that she was probably undernourished for, and she still did it. So this isn't a question of your body being like unable to. Like it did so much, and now it just needs more help. It needs more resources before you ask it to do it again. I see some version of this many times with my secondary challenges. This isn't a question of like, can your body do this? It's asking for help. And
Right.
again, that communication, that being in communication with your body, looking at your menstrual cycle, what is it telling us it needs? These are signs, these chemical pregnancies, they are signs in your body's like cry for help of like, hey, I need some help here before we do this. And that's where I can step in and just kind of be that bridge of communication.
So good. Where do you feel testing falls into all this?
Mhm.
Because I sort of have a like love-hate relationship with testing in general, because
Mhm.
while I completely understand that it can be very helpful, I also think it can be pretty harmful because
Yeah.
if, first of all, you're getting a snapshot, right? you're getting a snapshot of a moment. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's the same in a week or it's the same in a couple. And then if you get things that aren't ideal, you can really run with that. Like it can get in your brain of like, oh, well, this is why I have low this or I have no this or I have extras this, you know? So I know this from my own, sorry. I thought I heard music. Okay, it's gone. I thought I have an alarm and it's not going off. No. Sorry guys. So there's no music. It was just in my brain. But I was told so many different things around, the first time around, like, this is a problem and this is a problem. And I do believe that that impacted, our journey. So I'm curious sort of like how you use testing in your practice and if you have any favorite at-home tests or how you feel about like, oh my God, I get ads for every different, body temperature monitor and this hormone monitor, all the things. So let's talk about testing.
Yeah, I've spent a lot of time thinking about this because earlier on, a lot of women, and I think, I attracted a lot of women who, because of my personal story with disordered eating and body image, and I've gone through seasons where I went 9 months without ovulating because
Mm.
of choices I made in regards to running a half marathon and trying to not eat as much at the same time. It was a whole mess. So I attracted women with similar stories. I kind of think of it as, we had this white knuckle grip on our body. So when it came to testing, it was kind of coming to that same energy of like they were so scared to see the numbers.
Mm.
I kind of think of it as like, when it comes to money, it's like we just don't want to look at our bank account. We just want to avoid it. We want to have our head in the sand about it. And I sat with this a lot, and it kind of was like tapping into that younger version of myself of why would I be so scared to see the numbers or to see the testing? And I think it was a lack of trust in my body of I don't believe my body can change. I don't
Mm.
believe like my body is resilient or I'm scared to like be in communication with my body. And I actually just spoke with a client yesterday. Her and I had that conversation about it because she very much fit that profile. And she was a person who the first time around she didn't want to do any testing. And I always honor that, of course. And then she's thinking about trying for her second baby soon. So we had a conversation yesterday and now she's so interested in the testing. She wants to see it. And the way she described it was just she believes in her body more that it can change it. And she's just like she's so much more curious rather than I guess hard on herself or fearful of what her body will come back as. So I don't know. It's something that I'm still exploring. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on this or with your experience of not wanting to do the testing. But where I am now is for me it's exciting to I see it as just another way of being in communication with your body. And the tracking, looking at your menstrual cycle is great, but there is only so much that we can get from tracking our cycles. But for me, if we have the belief that our body can be resilient and change and heal, then if we take that approach, then it can be exciting. And I agree with you, it's never going to be perfect because it is one snapshot in time, with everything. Even, I do a lot of poop collections these days and putting your poop in the mail. Even that is one moment in time. But it's my job, we look at the overall patterns too. That's where someone who has training in this, we look at the patterns and we can kind of create this overall picture and take into consideration what did you experience last month versus what are you considering now. So it's an art form, it is.
Mhm.
But we do have to be mindful of, especially if women are coming to me after being poked and prodded by so many fertility clinics. I have ways of like tiptoeing into it too. But yeah, any thoughts on that or
So
perhaps
many thoughts.
where your mindset was out of like when or if now you're fearful of the testing. It's something I'm really trying to
Yeah.
understand more.
Fearful necessarily. I think for me, I think you said something really important. And this is where I'm curious your thoughts on the like at home
Hmm.
DIY monitoring. Because, like, for example, let's start with the most basic one, which is like the clear blue. It's not that expensive. It's like $20 and you just, this is just to see
Sure.
you're ovulating. My friend was like, well, yeah, but I was taking those and it was telling me that I was ovulating, but then I was going to the doctor who was doing a, intravaginal thingy. What do they call that? It just flew out of my head, but the ultrasound, there
Yeah.
you go. And it was incorrect. So there's that. For me, it's really that factor. It's the trust. Like, am I
Mm.
outsourcing something to something that might not be that trustworthy, right? And am I basing my actions and my decisions and the way I'm thinking and feeling on something that perhaps isn't accurate? So there's that aspect. The other aspect for me, and again, I'm really mostly talking about I don't know, I guess I could be talking about all tests, but is there a way for certain things that I can trust myself and get more in touch with myself and get similar answers through that?
Hmm.
However, what I think is so powerful is when you work with someone like you, who obviously has the background, has the knowledge, has the know-how to interpret that data and to not make it
Hmm.
a fear situation, then I think it can be super powerful. I'll give an example of that. So I did the Tiny Health gut test
Hmm.
for my 2-year-old. She has some skin. It's called ketosis pilaris.
Sure.
Yeah. So I was curious because I've had my own gut health challenges and I understand that she was swimming in my soup for for 9 months, right? There's a technical term for that. So I was curious. I was curious. And I was apprehensive. I certainly was apprehensive, but I was curious because I tried all the things that I could think of for this ketosis pilaris and it wasn't budging. So it's like, all right, let's look at her gut. I definitely opened that email like holding my breath. And I will say that there was a major difference in looking at it myself and seeing what it was showing me versus the 30-minute consult I had with the tiny health professional
Mm.
several months later, where she was able to be like, okay, yeah, here's this and this, but this is really normal and this we see all the time. And, so I think it's so important I think it's kind of a dangerous place to go to do these DIY tests yourself. And I think it can be very powerful if you're working with someone that you trust and that you know isn't going to scare you and that you know is going to be able to read the data in a more bird's eye view than just like, oh my God, I see, C. diff, which is a invasive
Yep.
bacteria. That must be bad. And so all those things.
Beautiful. And I mean, the key point to everything you said is finding someone you trust and who
Yeah,
isn't
100%.
going to fearmonger.
Right.
Because I want to honor a lot of experiences I've heard where they go into the doctor's office and like, you didn't ovulate, let's go to IVF. Or like, you have a 1% chance of it happening. Like, oh my gosh, the stories I hear is like they never cease to amaze me. But yeah, no, to your point, I mean, that's it. And when you were talking about, the OPKs or the LH strips, it's been my experience too with clients. I don't know if I want to say this brand, but there's a lot of like urine metabolite things that you can use these days to detect ovulation. And I've had more than one experience recently where they've been using this brand and it tells them they ovulate, but similar to you or your friend, then they go to the doctor's office or we do the Dutch test and they in fact did not ovulate. So it's crazy. It can be really crazy making. So to your point, so what else can we do instead? This is where body literacy and fertility awareness and understanding your menstrual cycle and using it as a health assessment tool can be really powerful because the data we get from your body, I find to be the most accurate, whether it's using your cervical mucus to predict ovulation and using your BBT to confirm ovulation. It's not perfect. It's not, there's situations where we can see no cervical mucus and we still ovulate, or we see abundant cervical mucus and we don't ovulate. But it's not just, this isn't like a one and done thing. We just need to look at the patterns. And to your point, I've gone into visits with clients where they're like, oh my gosh, this, and this. And I'm like, no problem. Of course I haven't. Like, you flew on a red eye and you changed time
Mm-hmm.
zones. So ovulation is just happening later. Like, no problem. Of
Mm-hmm.
course. Your body was doing what it was supposed to do. It was protecting you. I've had an experience where it was early on in my own health journey where I was the first naturopathic doctor I was working with. I was so excited to do my hormone testing. I was waiting for cycle day 21 and cycle day 3. That's what she was instructing me to do at the time. And I experienced this like huge, unexpected emotional trauma, like out of the blue. And then it completely screwed up. I didn't ovulate or I didn't start my period. I'm not sure exactly how it played out. And I was so frustrated because I was like, oh my gosh, like I was supposed to do this testing. Why didn't I ovulate? Like my cycle's been so regular. But it's like, no, my body was just protecting me. Like it didn't feel safe to ovulate. Like it wouldn't have wanted to conceive whenever you just got hit with this, of course. And so it's just tying it together. And, there's been so many versions of that where people come like, oh, I didn't ovulate. I'm like, yeah, you did. Here it is. It just happened a little later than you thought it did.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to just like put together the patterns and acknowledge that our body is always changing. Our body is always so adaptable and is adapting to our environment. And we're not robots. We're not living in a bubble. So of course it's going to look a little different every cycle, but it's not a curse. It's quite incredible and it's really amazing the way our body works and adapts. It can adapt, it can downregulate, and it can also upregulate, and we just have to create the environment and the circumstances for it to feel safe enough to conceive. So Yeah, I really think, I think it's the day and age that we're living in where you can take so much into your own hands. I think there's a lot
Mm.
of good that can come from it. It can be really empowering, but you do have to vet it and you have to kind of like run it through the right filters. And yeah, just be careful. Use your intuition of where are you getting your information from.
Totally. And I think this, it's just going to get more and more so this way, like with AI. And I think that
Oh, goodness.
my prediction is that we are going to come back around to like we actually need each other. I see this in my business too. Like
Yes.
you can Google or ask AI about anything related to feng shui, and you're going to get sometimes an okay answer, but oftentimes a really weird one. And if you don't know, then you don't know. So
Yep.
I think that we might go through this temporary period where everybody is like, I got this. I can just ask ChatGPT. And I do think we're going to come back around to like, oops, we need each other. And we
Thousand
need
percent.
we need to work with people that this is their prophecy and this is their mission and this is their purpose. And there's, you can, yeah, I think AI is fantastic for those like, I'm flying out of MacArthur Airport. Where should I park? Like
Yes.
that's a perfect use case because who needs to ask, who needs to spend time on that? But when it comes to these like way more intimate things, I do think that we need each other. So, in that vein, I would love for you to tell people all about what you've
Yeah.
got going on, how they can work with you, where they can find you, all of the things. And also, I can say this again because I know I'm asking a lot in this one question, but I would really love to know like what are you very excited about right now? Like what's got
Yeah.
you like jazzed?
Yeah, I'm sure it'll all come out. Yeah, it'll all come out in this answer. And just I want to just speak to your point, which also speaks to how I work. I recently have just had conversations around AI and what it can do and what it can't do for us in this world of functional health. You can plug in your lab results and it might give you
Oh, wow.
pretty accurate like scientific analysis of like here's what's going on. But what I stand by is what it can't do for you, which I hope I've portrayed in this conversation of what I do for my clients is it can't bring you the art form of curating protocols and looking at that bird's eye view and how do these all play together.
Nuance.
And
Yeah.
it can't bring the nuance, it can't bring the art to it. And it's why I love this work so much. And it is what I'm always jazzed up about is this is truly an art form to me of being in communication with your body. Yes, at first glance, it is sciencey, and I love the science too. And, all pure like it's all great, the literature. But at the end of the day, I see this as an art form of how is your body weaving together, how is it being communication to create your internal landscape. Oh, I lost my train of thought. That's what it's missing. And so much of my work, the bulk of our work together, it's going to be starting to try something, seeing how your body responds. Oh, does your digestion change? Is your skin getting better? Are you sleeping better? And then I am constantly adjusting, constantly asking questions, and just again being that bridge to being in communication with your body. So that is what I'm always so excited. That's my favorite part about my work is kind of using my paintbrush to paint these strokes and um, curate these protocols to be in communication with your body. And what I've been introduced in my practice over the last year and a half has been the microbiome piece. And it's one of those things where I can't believe there was a time where I didn't use it because it has done so much for my clients. It has helped me help my clients so much more and it's gotten them incredible results. Historically, I had just used the Dutch test looking at the hormone metabolism pathways, which is fantastic as well. But what the GI map has been able to do is take it a step further and say, okay, why is estrogen being pushed into that pathway? And then we look at the GI map and say, there's this inflammation or
Hmm.
your liver isn't detoxing properly. So it has just created this well-rounded picture. And I continue just to be so jazzed up about the microbiome. And again, I am probably just at the tip of the iceberg of what I know, but what it is doing for women, especially not just to help women conceive naturally, by the way, which most of my clients do, but I also support women going into fertility treatments. And so using the microbiome to support implantation, that has been huge. And it's so fascinating. So I could talk about the microbiome all day. And there's like a meme out there right now because I think the show Nobody Wants This recently came out, and there's like a meme of like, oh, is she the person who just like won't shut up about the microbiome? Like it's me. Like I won't shut up about it. But it has just been such a staple. And it is how I support my clients, a big part of how I've been supporting them lately. And I'm happy to kind of walk you through the phases of that if that feels helpful.
Really want to know how people can work with you. Like, do you work
Yeah.
one-on-one? Do you have programs? What's going on? All
Mhm.
those things. And where do
Oh,
people
thank
find you and
you.
where do people follow you?
Yeah. Thank you, thank you, thank you. My practice is called the Holistic Fertility Clinic. It is a telehealth practice, so I'm able to work with women all over the country. I do only work with people one-on-one right now, which is, I've loved so much. And I think I started here, I went away from it, and I've really circled back to it the past couple of years. And it's what I love so much. The transformation that can just happen, like of just going so in depth with one person one-on-one. And when it comes to fertility, group programs, they just don't hit the same way, or they don't have the same impact. So I do only work with women one-on-one. I use 6-month container, which is broken up into 3 phases. First phase 1 is discover, where we do 3 functional lab tests to get that complete picture of your internal landscape. Phase 2 is 3 months and is called heal, that's where the magic happens. That's where we're in communication with your body. I am interpreting your protocols, or interpreting your lab results, creating protocols. And again, we're in communication with your body for those 3 months. A lot of my clients are typically seeing very significant change, or if not conceiving, at that 4-month mark. And then the last phase, conceive, is a 2-month buffer to either continue supporting your body to help you conceive, or if you have conceived at that point, then I shift my support to be first trimester specific. And that has been really important, because a lot of my clients are coming in with a history of chemical pregnancies or miscarriage. So it didn't feel good just to be like, okay, see ya, whenever they get
Good
pregnant.
luck.
Yeah, it's like, all right, bye, good job.
Have fun with the anxiety.
Exactly. So it's felt really good to continue to be there for them through that 12-week mark, if not longer. So yeah, that is the kind of the bread and butter. That's my signature offering. There's a couple of one-offs depending the starting point. If people come in and have done all that work and just want to do like the GI map piece, for example, then we can just do that. But for most people, they're buying into the 6 months and going really deep, and it's really special.
That's amazing. This is just a really random question, mostly because I'm curious. Do you have any problems with restrictions around that testing? Like you can't get tested in New York, or da 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 da. Like
Mm-mm.
how does that play into it?
Yeah, it sounds like you know about the New York restrictions.
I live in New York, yeah.
You are in New York. Yeah, okay. So New York has regulations of
Is it just
people.
New York, by the way?
No, it's
Isn't it Kentucky? Does
New
Kentucky do this too?
York. Oh, I have heard of Kentucky. I thought it was all in the
I'm
Northeast.
making that up. I have no idea. I have no idea.
It's like New York, New Jersey, and Rhode Island, maybe? Something like that. New York is the strictest, because I was just talking to someone in New Jersey and I can get her the test. I have workarounds. I've sent a GI map to, oh, it's not Rhode Island. I was thinking of Rhode Island because my client who lived in New York, she had a
I
Rhode
do. I send
Island.
all my testing to
Yeah,
Connecticut, where my
exactly.
stepmom lives.
Yeah. So we do that. We do that. The Dutch test, we can get it to New York. So there's always been a workaround. We have to get a little creative. Most women who work with me don't mind, because they're kind of already, taking that rebel approach
Mm.
to healthcare. So I find a way for my clients. But you're right. There are annoying restrictions when it comes to New York with that stuff, but there's always a way.
There is always a way. So before we say bye-bye, goodbye, I would just love to just sort of end on like a really uplifting note, which is, what are 3 things, like if you were a client of yours going through this, what are 3 things you would ignore, and what are 3 things
Mm.
you would lean into? If you're not, let's say
Ooh.
someone's like, they're like, oh, maybe I'm curious about working with Haley, but I'm not sure. I'm not trying to get you to convince someone to work with you at all.
Yeah,
That's not what I'm
yeah.
asking. But just like, where would you have your focus be?
Oh, that is such a good question. I'm going to start with what popped to mind immediately of what I would lean into is honoring your intuition. I have seen it time and time again, and this has been such a huge part of my own personal journey of a woman's intuition is a force, and I wholeheartedly believe that it is heightened and it wants a seat at the table, especially when you are on this fertility journey, not to mention when you're pregnant postpartum, but it wants to be there. And I really encourage women, and I guess this might be my second thing in the same vein, of move in the direction that feels like an exhale.
Mm.
So often it's this indecision of, do I go to the fertility treatment? Do I do IVF? Do I go the more natural route? Do I just pause? You know the answer. And if you really sit with yourself and go through each option and which one makes it like, where does your body relax? That's what I would lean into. And there's no right answer. I think for science and fertility treatment, it's incredible that we even have the option. And I've spoken to 2 women recently where it was just like a thank God moment of like, oh my gosh, like thank God we can do IVF. That's your react, like then that is the right decision for you. And I've had another experience with a client where we did all the testing, we did the GI map, and she had a parasite that came back that I think was causing some inflammation and kind of burning out her immune system. And I created this protocol, but the protocol would have required her to stop actively trying to conceive because the antimicrobial herbs weren't conducive with trying to conceive. And she was like, that doesn't feel right. Like, I'm not willing. That feels more stressful to me
I
to
get
stop
it.
trying to
I
conceive.
totally get
Like,
it.
of course, of course.
Yeah.
I'm like, no problem. There
Right.
are a million ways to go about a fertility journey. And by the way, we didn't kill off the parasite. She decided to move forward with IU or with letrozole, and I supported her along that letrozole journey. And she's now in her second trimester. And that's
So
what
she
I've
has that baby.
seen.
She's going to be like, let's kill this thing.
By the way, and what I'll
I mean,
also
it could have
offer.
left. Who knows?
Yes, yeah, that's what I was going to say is, so often or how our body changes in pregnancy is
Mm,
miraculous. I wouldn't even just go in to kill that parasite postpartum because like her body could have changed completely. And obviously it wasn't standing in the way of her getting pregnant. She is pregnant and she is healthy. But my point being with that story is she followed her intuition and it
mm.
worked. So don't disregard your intuition. I think if you're in that doctor's office and they're suggesting IVF and your body is tensing and you're white knuckling, like listen to that. Like that
Mm.
is really, really good information. Anytime I always hope I create a space where my clients feel comfortable telling me what does and doesn't feel right. And I take it so seriously. Like I'm like, oh, thank you. Like, okay, that's great information because I can't feel what you're feeling, but I can
Yet.
listen and I can give it. Yes. I'm working on it. My witchy potions. But they have an equal seat at the table as far as I'm concerned. And so I guess
Mm.
what I would say be caution of is kind of just in that same vein of, where do you feel your body tense? Where doesn't it feel right? And just be really curious and honor that.
Good. Haley, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I love this conversation. I love your approach. I just love how safe it feels. Like, I just really feel like you just hold such a beautiful, safe space. So I really hope my prayer for this
Thank
podcast is
you.
that it really reaches the people that need to hear this and that could really benefit from your support or have a friend that could
Thank
benefit
you.
from your support. Thank you
Mm.
so much for creating this
Thank
space with
you.
me. We will put all the links to follow Haley on Instagram and to find about more about her work and to work with her. It'll all be in the show notes, so you don't need to pull over. It's all good. And I'll talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thank you, Cody.
Bye. Don't leave. We're going to say goodbye privately.
Okay, feng shui time. Today I want to talk to you about mirrors. I would say one of the hot topics of feng shui. There's a lot of different perspectives on mirrors out there. You'll hear some people say to put this kind of mirror here or don't put a mirror there. But today I just want to touch on the basic principles of mirrors when it comes to feng shui. So a mirror is considered an enhancer, right? It's going to double the energy of whatever it's reflecting. So if you do nothing else in your home when it comes to mirrors, just go around and make sure that the mirrors in your home are reflecting things that you want to see. So for example, maybe your mirror is reflecting a beautiful vase of flowers that you replenish weekly, or your bed, which you love. Now I know that's a taboo one, right? Because there's plenty of people out there that say never put a mirror reflecting a bed, and we can talk about that. But in general, I'm just using that as an example. It's doubling the energy. So we really want to make sure that whatever we're seeing through that mirror is something that we love. That is principle number one. So for example, you wouldn't want to be reflecting your trash can. Now, when it comes to the do's and don'ts of mirrors, that is where we get really into personalization. Yeah, in general, I would say most people aren't going to benefit from having a mirror that reflects their front door, because most of the time that means that the energy that is coming into your home is bouncing back out via that mirror. However, there are situations where perhaps that is the right thing for that particular space, that particular person, that particular season of life. So always remember that whatever you see out there about feng shui, you're going to find most likely the opposite perspective. Now, let's add another little layer to this. We can use our mirrors, we can program our mirrors to reflect what we want in our life. So you could get into a practice of saying affirmations into a mirror if that's something you like, speaking kindly to yourself into a mirror, saying things like, this mirror is doubling the energy of prosperity and love in my home. That can be a really fun way to program and energize your mirrors. Making sure that mirrors are staying clean and clear is also really important. We want that energy to be fresh and to be vibrant. We want to reflect the clarity that we want to see in our lives. Remember, feng shui is really all about metaphor. It's all about learning how to see and speak the language of your home, which is through metaphor. Now, when we get into more of a personalized consultation, mirrors are used as remedies. They're used as ways to expand a space or to reflect something away from us that we don't want. But again, those more advanced uses are really best done with a trusted practitioner. So for now, if you're starting out with feng shui and this is something that's new to you, don't worry about all those things that you see too much. Sure, if one of them really feels like a yes to you and you see it, go with that. Trust your gut. There's so much about trusting your gut when it comes to feng shui because we all have this innate wisdom, this innate relationship with our home, whether we're open to it or not, it's there. But always just remember to come back to the basic. What is a mirror doing? A mirror is reflecting something. Make sure that something that you are reflecting is something that you want to see in your life. All right, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this first episode back. If you enjoyed this episode, it would mean so much to me if you just take 30 seconds to review this podcast. It helps so much. Share it with a friend, spread the word, and I will see you back here again real soon. Bye.